Disaster grips the Pacific Northwest as the Columbia River, swollen by unprecedented rains, spreads destruction. Here's a miracle in the midst of ruin, but the greater miracle is that more lives are not lost as raging waters spread over farms and villages in both the United States and Canada. Thousands are homeless and flee for safety, with the damage running into the millions. Relief supplies are brought in by boat to the survivors, and for weeks throughout the Fraser Valley, the flood hides details of the tragedy. Far to the southeast along the Florida coast, nature unleashes another terrific hurricane, spreading destruction from Key West to Miami. Winds ranging up to 140 miles an hour savagely blast a broad path of property damage, estimated at $25 million. Enormous crowds turn out in Amsterdam to say farewell to Queen Wilhelmina, abdicating after 50 years and now leading the cheers for her daughter, Juliana. The princess, with her prince consort Bernard, now comes to be invested as queen, the procession passing the approving eyes of Wilhelmina. Here in the 15th century cathedral, Juliana takes the oath in a colorful ceremony and then is cheered to the echo as she assumes the difficult task of leading her country through the trials and problems besetting the post-war world. The Dutch leave no room for doubt that they stand solidly back of the House of Orange. Thousands of tons of vitally needed coal and food supplies are stalled by the Russian blockade of Berlin. The Cold War between East and West is on, but the Soviets sadly underestimate America's strength in the air. Big four-motored planes of the Air Transport Command begin flying supplies into the city, and the greatest airborne movement of freight the world has ever seen makes the Soviet blockade futile. Meanwhile, in Berlin, tension mounts and violence frequently occurs between communists and Germans of the city's western zone. Near the battered Reichstag, crowds gather in a wild demonstration. French recovery is seriously set back by a communist-directed strike in the coal industry, closing down desperately needed mines. 300,000 coal miners are idle, and clashes between troops and strikers, with tear gas frequently used, lead to serious disorders. Some 40,000 reservists are called to the colors, and of course there is shooting, with the crisis assuming proportions of an insurrection. In Palestine, women of the Israeli army are reviewed by one of their leaders during a lull in the struggle to establish the new Zion state. While desperate efforts are made by the United Nations to effect a truce, bombing raids kill and injure hundreds in the Jewish shopping district of Jerusalem, and civilians sadly rescue survivors. Throughout the Holy Land, efforts to effect a settlement of questions involving boundaries prove futile, and only United Nations observers with a flag of truce succeed in halting the fighting. The Arabs watch in silence as errands of mercy are performed. The world's prayers for a peaceful settlement in the Holy Land go with Count Folke Bernadotte, UN mediator, but irresponsible factions bring about his assassination. While U.S. Secretary of State Marshall and representatives of South American republics meet in Bogota to discuss questions of reconstruction and unity, a leader of the Colombian Liberal Party is killed and revolution flames in the capital. Angry mobs burn buildings, overturn streetcars, and fill the air with machine gun fire, which of course brings needless casualty. Not even the visiting American officials are safe during the worst of the struggle for capture of the government until the forces of law and order prevail. The 92-ton Lockheed Constitution, world's biggest land plane, is tested. 168 Californians are aboard as the twin-deck giant takes off. Next stop, across the continent 10 hours later, at the Patuxent, Maryland Naval Air Station, and her crew of 12 puts her down like an airborne feather. The Air Force reveals the McDonnell XF, sometimes called the Parasite plane. A jet-propelled fighter that cannot take off. It must be carried aloft in a special trapeze rigged in the mother ship. The pilot is all set to go. He's on his own now and ready to fly at a speed faster than sound. Reducing speed, he is picked up by the B-29. 76 flying boxcars and 2,200 paratroopers of the famed 82nd Airborne swing into action in the biggest training maneuver since VJ Day. From Fort Bragg, North Carolina, they descend upon Camp Campbell, Kentucky, in the greatest mass drop ever held in the United States. Virtually all the men and their equipment are pinpointed precisely on the target. A stunning success and reassuring to the nation as air power proves ready. Another display of growing aerial might is seen at Andrews Field as Lockheed Shooting Stars put on a breathtaking display. The noise is deafening as the sleek jets flash over the field. And actually, they are far away before the sound of their exhausts reaches the ground. And here is a mighty armada aloft in a demonstration of air power for waging the peace. America goes to the polls on November 2nd to elect a president. The Republican candidate, Governor Thomas E. Dewey of New York, campaigns on the theme of unity and competence in government. President Harry S. Truman, called to office from the vice presidency on the passing of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, asks the voters to keep him in the White House for a full term and the Democratic Party in power for another 4 years. Shortly before noon on Election Day, the Republican nominee goes to the polls, supremely confident of a landslide victory that is practically conceded by many Democrats. President Truman, no less confident, goes to the polls early in Independence, Missouri, accompanied by his staunchest supporters, Mrs. Truman and daughter Margaret. The president casts his ballot, followed by Margaret voting for the first time. And the entire world awaits the verdict as all over America this simple act of a free people is repeated millions of times. The nation is amazed by Harry S. Truman's victory. All my efforts will be devoted to the cause of peace in the world and the prosperity of our people here at home. President Truman goes back to Washington for 4 more years, the greatest political upset in American history.
February 20th, 1962, dawn at Cape Canaveral. Dawn of Colonel John Glenn's Day of Destiny. Everything is in readiness on Pad 14. Supported by the gantry, the Mercury capsule rests atop the Atlas missile as the countdown in the blockhouse proceeds. These men are but part of the team of 15,000 men back of the astronaut's flight. A team that will follow Glenn's every moment. It's 5 hours before blastoff as he squeezes into his spacesuit. His wide grin belies the 10 postponements of his flight that have kept him grounded. Finishing touches are made on the 40-year old man's spacesuit. And there's an air of optimism, a feeling that this truly is the day. Carrying his now familiar portable air conditioner, he prepares to go to the 11th deck of the gantry. The clocks point to 6 a.m. The skies are beginning to lighten, and a cool north wind rustles across the Cape. Colonel Glenn's date with destiny comes 10 months after the Russians claimed an orbital flight by Yuri Gagarin. and less than a year after Alan Shepard blazed a suborbital trail for the U.S. This is the climax of 3 years of training. This is the moment that the eyes of the world turned to Cape Canaveral. The Russian orbits were in a thick fog of secrecy. Every step the United States makes is in the white-hot glare of worldwide publicity. In the capsule atop the Atlas missile, the colonel will be strapped to a contoured couch. Once in flight, the Mercury will be tilted so that the astronaut will ride backwards. The seconds tick off his rendezvous with destiny. Millions are moved to silent prayer. Everything is go. The takeoff of the Atlas, blasted aloft by 360,000 pounds of thrust, is perfect. Glenn is subject to 6 times the force of gravity in Friendship 7, but he reports back calmly to Commander Alan Shepard below.
Fuel 102, 101, oxygen 78, 100, amps 27.
Roger, loud and clear, flight path is good, 69.
Roger, check's okay. Mine was 70 on your mark. There's some vibration area coming up here now.
Roger, reading you loud and clear, John. Oh, Roger, we confirm on TM.
Edison Tower is green.
Roger.
Roger, 0G, and I feel fine. Capsule is turning around. Oh, that view is tremendous.
Roger, turnaround has started.
Capsule turning around, and I could see the booster during turnaround just a couple of 100 yards behind me. It was beautiful.
Roger, 7, you have a go, at least 7 orbits.
Roger, understand go for at least 7 orbits. This is Friendship 7, can see clear back a big cloud pattern way back across toward the Cape. Beautiful sight. That is affirmative, that's what's set in the clock. The horizon is a brilliant blue.
He speeds at 17,500 miles an hour as he reaches a high point of 160 miles and a low altitude of 99 miles. Each orbit on the 81,000-mile trip takes about 90 minutes. 3 times the colonel sees a sunrise, and when he enters the atmosphere once more, a shield protects the astronaut from the 3,000-degree heat. The command ship in the target area, the Randolph, follows the course of Colonel Glenn's descent and alerts other pickup vessels as the Mercury speeds to a landing. The drogue chute opens to correct any spin, and then a larger chute pulls out to ease the Friendship 7 to the sea. 4 hours and 56 minutes after takeoff, Colonel Glenn returns to Earth. Right at hand is the destroyer Noah, and she speeds to the capsule to take the vehicle and pilot aboard. The flight is a success beyond the wildest dreams of the scientists and technicians involved. The end of a saga. With support cables attached, a pincer-like crane lifts the Friendship 7 aboard. The triumph of the U.S. space team, the climax of 3 years of work and planning. As the Friendship 7 is eased aboard the destroyer with Glenn still inside, the crew attempts to open the upper exit, but then blow the escape hatch so that he may leave the capsule immediately. The Marine landed. Situation go. Colonel John H. Glenn, Jr. left his footprints among the stars. He has a grin that is as wide as the path he blazed as he rests briefly before being transferred to the carrier. He's lifted aboard in a maneuver that looks more dangerous than the flight itself. The A helicopter takes him to the carrier for a debriefing and examinations by medical men before he takes 2 days' rest on an island in the Bahamas. The helicopter no sooner touches down on deck than Glenn gets a preview of the congratulations that are still to come. On every hand there is jubilation. On every side, smiles and cheers. He signs over his precious log to the National Space Administration. Data that holds secrets of outer space. Now, a rest before the deluge of honors a proud country waits to bestow. The return of a conquering hero. Home is the man of the hour, and into the arms of his waiting wife for a warm moment before he is claimed by cheering thousands. First honors for Colonel Glenn. The President presents the Distinguished Service Medal of the Space Administration to the nation's space pioneer. Then on to Washington, where a steady drizzle can't put a damper on the reception for the nation's new star from outer space. He rides from the White House to the Capitol as more than 250,000 hail the man and his achievement. Both the galleries and the floor are jammed to capacity as the colonel arrives to a standing ovation. With a modesty that befits a man of awesome deeds, he has this to say.
We are all proud to have been privileged to be part of this effort, to represent our country as we have. As our knowledge of this universe in which we live increases, may God grant us the wisdom and guidance to use it wisely. Thank you.
Colonel John Glenn, Jr., the first American in orbit.